Alright, I'm going to talk about a few things. Basically, I did a little write-up that's on the blog about what I did last weekend. And this is just to kind of run through a few things and show you what I'm talking about visually, because it may be hard to pick up from the words necessarily. My main problem with the car was I went to this tire's a lot bigger than what I had before, because I'd been just running one set of tires. So, both sets of tires are a lot larger, especially the fronts. The front I reset the front end, the rear end got distracted and didn't reset the rear end, and so my car was flipping off the track, which was surprising. And then I realized that I'm a dummy and I didn't set the axle cams back up. They needed to drop the ride height on the rear, and it was just lifting the car all over the place. As an aside, normally I don't run that big of a tire normally, even on either end of the car. But I also didn't want to use up all my tires like on the first weekend for no reason, just for practicing. So, and as traction comes up at an event, you do need to have a little smaller tire, but at the same time, it's also kind of stupid just to burn up all your tires in practice, especially since the F1 tires last a pretty good amount of time. They're not, the cars are light, they don't really burn off, so you can run them for quite a bit of time, and if you want to cut them again to keep them straight or even to make them smaller or whatever, that's usually not a problem. Anyway, a lot of what I was talking about was mostly concentrated on here and inside the tire, and I'll take the tires off and show what I was trying to do. When you lower this front camber plate, it's gonna give you a lot more camber anyway, and it's also gonna angle the arms down a lot. So what I kind of tried to do here, you can see, right here and right here I have spacers above the arm. In this case, it's the largest spacer that comes out of the three. There's the big one, the medium, and the small. Medium and the small are still under here. Biggest one is here, and what that does is it brings the arm down. Because before that, otherwise you have the arm like this, and then besides the car already has plenty of camber in it because of the lowered plate. Then you're angling the arm up like this, and now you get a bunch of camber gain as soon as the wheel starts moving. So lowering this actually brings you can see that the upper arms are fairly straight. Now here also, right, it's kind of a little bit hard to see. Right here I have 2 millimeters of spacers underneath the regular ball set on the plate here. That's about a third of the way back up if you have the spacers under this thing. So I did bring it back up a little bit, and there's an interplay between this and this. Obviously, the further down this is, the more this has to come down to compensate if you want to maintain a sort of a semi-straight angle. Otherwise, as this comes down, you're going up, 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 up. And the same thing if the more you bring this up, the flatter it's going to get, or even go the opposite way, which you never want. You never want to be like that, only flat or like this. So those are the two main things. The one thing I did find actually is it's really weird. Lowering this, kind of dropping this whole thing down. You're still getting the cam, the change here, where this kind of pitches itself forward, which is something you want, but changing this around, even in comparison to the normal setting where you have the spacers and you're not doing anything weird at all. This seemed to make the car feel more stable off center, more, very calm. You could really just turn the wheel and the car just turned. Like I said, my one friend drove it and he was impressed at how easy to drive it was just to drive it. First time out, no preparation. He doesn't even run pan cars. Well, I mean, he has run pan cars, but he's been running touring cars for a long time. And he said he was surprised at how easy it was to drive. Because a lot of times, especially the F1 cars, are kind of twitchy. So I think lowering this whole thing down, this basically, even though this is lifted off of this thing, it's still lowered from the stock position overall. Might do something. I'm not sure why that is, but I've noticed the same kind of thing with touring cars. Changing where this outer arm, how the height of the outer arm, generally does some strange stuff. I know that, like with a touring car, if you raise the ball stud up out here, and it, even if the arm is level, the car will almost want to screw itself into the ground. The difference, for some reason, the difference between this lower arm and the upper arm seems very important, and I don't know how to explain it. I've read suspension books and stuff, and no one really talks about it. But I'm not a designer. I don't know why that is, but there's something basic about the difference between this arm and this arm. The lower and the upper. There's something about that. And the further they get apart, the more traction seems to be produced as these two arms get further apart. So, I mean, that's something to work on too. If your car is really twitchy, you can lower all this stuff down. That may be something as well. So it's a little bit of a new area to try out, because this whole lowering on the front plate's pretty cool. It actually is kind of a interesting experiment. But that's the main thing with the front end. And really all that, with the rear, you're still running the U plate, or the flex plate, whatever they call it, the flex T-bar, not the solid one. I did try the solid, the one that looks like this but it's solid. I did try that, and it kind of made the car a little bit. It didn't rotate as hard. And I for the tracks that we have, mostly the real tight carpet tracks, you need the car to rotate it, to twist itself around, to rotate itself around. So that's something that I try to promote for my own cars, is to make sure that they're always going to really just be able to twist and turn. Because when you make the car flatter like that, it kind of just sort of does this, whereas when the car sort of twists itself, it can kind of turn, there's like an articulation, basically. But when you flatten it out, it kind of just slides a little bit more. That's more what it does than actually kind of twist itself around the corner. There's kind of this, I think it's because when it does this, the wheelbase shortens on one side and the car can turn, kind of, which sounds crazy because it's not that much of a change in a wheelbase, but I don't know, that's how it seems. Again, I'm no expert. But that's pretty much it. Can't think of anything else that was important to note. And I do have the bigger battery in there. I was running the little battery all day. I just threw the big one in because it was charged for the last run of the day, because I needed to get home from the track. But I still think for higher traction, the little battery is better. This one was just a practice deal. So that's pretty much it. Yeah, I did, and I also did. I did take the spacers out of this right here, but that's that's minor because there's so much. I was actually trying to reduce the amount of the kick in there, and it does take bite out of the front end. The week before, I just had everything crazy laid in. Even had the spacers back there. The car was awesome, but like I said, the smaller tires worked better with that kind of a setting. If I could get the car to ride height, it didn't flip over. That's how I'd run it because it turned unbelievably well, and that's just the key to going fast. Is on small carpet tracks, is your car has to turn like crazy and be free in the corner. So that's. For those of you racing asphalt, that may not be the way to go. You may be wind up with a setup more like this. In fact, if I was racing asphalt, I would try something like this. Lowering the arm out here at these 2 points, and sort of dropping this thing down, but then raising the ball studs back up to a height that was not flat, but close to it, and you can play with that if you have enough like 1/2 mil and 1 millimeter shims. You can kind of go up and down and see where you like it, but the car is real. It was a little bit of a dead feel. It didn't, it wasn't hard to drive at all, and maybe that's what you want for that. Just lower all that stuff down and kind of kill some of that response and some of the oversteering. So. That would be maybe one way to look at it. Other than that, that's pretty much it. So, thanks for watching me ramble on once again.